Conrad Elkins, a mysterious man, appeared on modern streets, seeming no stranger than anyone else. Yet, his strangeness was difficult to define. He had an aura of remote knowledge, wisdom, and aesthetic refinement. His features were Caucasian, but he didn't fit into any known ethnic stock. His age was indeterminable, and his garb was modish and well-tailored. He was a little under medium height, with delicate build and effeminate features, except for his great brow. His eyes were large, luminous, and purplish, and his hands were remarkable for their fineness, flexibility, and vigor. I, a chemistry student, encountered Elkins several times on the streets, in libraries and museums. He was reading books on sex, biology, chemistry, and physics, and visiting museums to familiarize himself with modern science and archaeology. I was curious about him, but he was extremely taciturn, volunteering no information about himself. One day, I approached him at the Natural History Museum, where he was standing before a case of artifacts from the mounds of the Mississippi Valley. He forestalled me, asking if I had thought about civilizations being lost and buried by natural disasters and social upheavals. He spoke as if he had inside information on the subject. I was surprised that he knew my name and had read my thesis on cosmic rays. Our acquaintance grew rapidly, and he visited my laboratory many times. I was admitted to his modest lodgings, which were near mine. Despite our meetings, I remained ignorant about Elkin's past. He liked me, perhaps due to the universal human need of a friend. I felt a sense of impossible seniority on his part, as if he was older and intellectually more evolved than me. The furnishings of his rooms were noncommittal, but I saw that he was a linguist, with books in at least 4 modern languages. He was interested in various subjects, but spoke with intellectual impersonality, giving the impression of boundless reserves. He didn't think much of current medicine and surgery, and his pronouncements on electricity and astronomy were at variance with accepted ideas. Elkins showed interest in my chemical researches, but I felt that he looked upon them as elementary. Despite his enigmatic nature, I was drawn to him, and our quasi-friendship grew. I met Conrad Elkins, a mysterious man who seemed to possess knowledge from another era. Despite his enigmatic nature, I grew to admire and revere him. However, I couldn't help but sense that he was withholding information from me. One day, he revealed that he was not from our time, but from 15,000 AD. His real name was Cronus Alkin, and he had come to our era to uncover the secret of sex determination, which was lost in the Dark Ages. In his time, humanity was threatened by an overpreponderance of male children, and he believed that our era held the key to restoring balance. He invited me to accompany him back to his time, promising to explain everything and provide a safe return to my own era. I was stunned, but didn't doubt his veracity. I agreed to go with him, and he began to explain how he had traveled through time using a modified space travel vessel. He had studied our language, costumes, and history to blend in, and had even created his own clothes based on a 1940s design. He revealed that his departure was carefully planned, and he had made the time journey in a state of unconsciousness. He landed in the Catskill Mountains and made his way to New York, where he had been living and studying our civilization. In the story, a man named Elkins, who later calls himself Cronus Alkin, takes his friend on a journey through time to the year 15,000 AD. Before they leave, Cronus shows his friend some coins and clothes from his time period, including a tunic and sandals. They travel to a hidden location in the Catskill Mountains, where Cronus reveals a time machine. He explains how it works, and they both put on clothes from his time period. Cronus sets the machine to take them to the year 15,000 AD, and they experience a strange sensation as they travel through time. When they arrive, they find themselves on Cronus' country estate near Jarma, the capital of Achameria, which is built on the ruins of New York City. The climate is subtropical, and the weather is controlled by humans. Cronus shows his friend around the estate, which includes a large building with aircraft, gardens, and fields of unknown vegetables. They also see long, one-storied houses where Cronus' cousins and a Martian overseer live, as well as Venusian slaves who do the agricultural labor. Cronus carries an electronic projector that can paralyze people up to 50 yards away, which he uses to control the slaves. As they walk towards the house, they see fountains, palms, and unusual plants and flowers. Cronus told me that some of the strange beings on his estate were from Venus. As we walked through the hot, humid air, we came upon a terrifying scene. Two men, including Cronus' cousin Oron, and a massive, barrel-chested Martian named Trog, were fighting off a horde of bestial creatures. The creatures were armed with clubs and stones, and Cronus quickly used his projector to defeat them. As we approached, I saw one of the men, Altus, fall to the ground, badly hurt. Cronus and Oron tended to him, and I met Trog, who was intelligent and wise, but also strange and unbridgeable. We took Altus inside the beautiful house, where Cronus used a device to heal his wounds. Cronus explained that the Venusians were a major problem, as they were ferocious, bred quickly, and outnumbered humans. He also told me that he had shared the truth about his time travel with Oron, but wanted to keep it a secret from the rest of the world. As we ate dinner, Cronus spoke about the world of the future, where people lived for hundreds of years, and crime was rare. He said that people were motivated by desires for knowledge, art, and intellectual pursuits, rather than wealth and power. However, he worried that this life of ease might be making people weak. Cronus also told me about the interplanetary commerce and the use of slave labor on plantations. He said that they had the power to manufacture everything, but preferred natural food and materials. As I settled into life on the estate, I began to learn the language and was given access to a vast library and laboratory where Cronus performed incredible feats of science. In a world beyond my own, I found myself in the company of Cronus, a master of science. He showed me a cabinet filled with relics from ancient cities like New York, including porcelain plates, Masonic emblems, and spark plugs. The sight of these familiar, yet ancient objects filled me with a deep nostalgia for my own time. Altus, a wounded man, had recovered, and I heard no more of the insubordination from Cronus slaves. However, I couldn't shake off the memory of the savage-looking Venusians who worked on the plantation with a sullen air. They were cannibalistic by nature and had a history of selling their own tribe members to terrestrial traders. The Martians, on the other hand, were traders who had come to Earth, bringing with them their chemical and astronomical discoveries. They were a philosophical race, addicted to a powerful drug called ganultin, which gave them wild visions. Cronus and his cousins were in touch with the world through radio and television, receiving news from all over the planet, including Mars, Venus, and the Moon. I saw many incredible scenes on their televisors, including daily outbreaks of Venusian slaves and mysterious acts of sabotage. One day, news arrived of a bizarre mineral plague known as the Black Rot, which was devouring buildings in Jarma. The rot was a microorganism that had somehow been introduced from Venus, and it was capable of devouring half the elements known to chemistry. Cronus, a renowned chemist, was called upon to study the rot, and he took me with him to Jarma. In Jarma, I saw a city of supreme grace and beauty, with gardens and parks meandering through its extent. The architecture was open and aerial, and the streets were broad and spacious. I was struck by the sight of Martians and Venusians mingling with humans. At the conclave of savants, I met 200 men who had gathered to discuss the Black Rot. I was awed by their intellectuality and wisdom, but also noticed a world-old ennui and sterility on their faces. During the discussion, I suggested that radium might be used to combat the plague, and Cronus presented my idea to the assembly. The idea was met with great favor, and work began immediately to prepare radium on a large scale. In less than an hour, chemists were ready to visit the affected area with portable machines that used radium to arrest the black. In the year 15,000 AD, I found myself in the city of Jarma, surrounded by incredible luxury and technology. The people of this era had mastered natural laws, and their daily lives were filled with wonders like invisible music, intangible servants, and food appearing at a mere wish. I was honored as the originator of a means to stop the Black Rot, but I felt it was just a lucky accident. Cronus, my host, explained my aversion to publicity and helped me avoid numerous invitations. As Cronus attended to his business, I explored the city, marveling at the unfamiliar sights. I walked through streets filled with noiseless vehicles, air vessels, and ether ships. The people wore colorful costumes, and the atmosphere was tranquil and orderly. However, I noticed the scarcity of women, who seemed lifeless and mechanical. Cronus told me that the sex had reached its evolutionary limit and was now stagnant. I felt homesick as I wandered through the city, especially when I approached the Martian Quarter, where I saw strange architecture and exotic odors. One afternoon, I heard rumors of fresh revolts and decided to return to the city. As twilight fell, I found myself in a quiet, sylvan wilderness, but soon realized I was being stalked by Venusians. They attacked me, and I was knocked unconscious. When I came to, I was bound and surrounded by Venusians dancing around a fire. I saw another man, Joss Taller, bound beside me. We conversed quietly, and I learned that he was the owner of the Venusian slaves who had revolted against him. He suspected that the Martians were secretly supporting the Venusians and that they might unleash a deadly plague on humanity. As we lay there, we watched the Venusians prepare to broil us alive over the coals. Joss remained calm and philosophical, discussing the situation with me. We knew our fate seemed hopeless, but we continued to talk, waiting for the inevitable. In the darkening landscape, Joss Taller and I were surrounded by the grotesque Venusians, who were preparing to throw us onto a fiery gridiron. But just as all hope seemed lost, a bluish searchlight illuminated the scene, and an air vessel landed nearby. Cronus Alkin and his companions emerged, armed with heat ray generators, and chased away the Venusians. We were rescued just in time, as a worldwide revolt of the slave population had begun, with 2 continents already in their hands. The situation was dire, with new and baffling plagues spreading rapidly, including deadly Martian insects and gases harmful to humans. Cronus, Altus, and I returned to Jarma, where we learned of the devastating events unfolding across the world. With the Venusians and Martians working together, the human population was facing extinction. Cronus decided that I should return to my own time using the time machine, which we set out to retrieve from his estate. As we flew over the countryside, we saw the devastating effects of the war, with houses gutted by fire and fields blighted by the Venusian mold. We arrived at the estate just in time to stop the Venusians from destroying the aerodrome and the time machine. In a swift and deadly attack, we eliminated the slaves and secured the area. Cronus, Hugh, and Altus returned to Jarma in the timeship after defeating the Venusians. They found the city in chaos, with the Martians declaring open hostility and using a deadly zero ray to attack humans. The people of Achemeria remained calm despite the dire situation, and scientists worked to combat the new pests and develop weapons against the outsiders. As the situation worsened, a new plague, the Yellow Death, spread across the country, making the air unbreathable for humans. The only solution was for humanity to evacuate to the Arctic Circle, where the organism couldn't penetrate. Cronus predicted that the Martians would soon enslave the Venusians and rule them with an iron hand. As Jarma prepared to flee, Cronus, Altus, and Hugh were among the last to leave. They flew northward in the time vessel, watching as the saffron cloud of the plague covered the horizon. They eventually reached the polar regions, where humanity had entrenched itself, and saw cities being built amid the ice and snow. The plan was to flee to the larger asteroids, which had been colonized by humans. A great fleet of space vessels was assembled, and each day more ships arrived from mid-ether to assist in the universal exodus. Before departing, Cronus gave Hugh instructions on how to use the time machine to return to his own era. Hugh was to fly solo in a small ether vessel to Pallas, his supposedly natal asteroid. The day of departure arrived, and the vessels took off, carrying the remaining people of the world into outer space. Cronus and Hugh shared a solemn moment, watching as the ships disappeared into the distance. Hugh was filled with sorrow and excitement, knowing that humanity was abandoning its home and would become exiles among the worlds. Cronus's face was unreadable, but he finally smiled and said it was time for him and Hugh to part ways. "Remember me and the fate of humanity when you return to your own time," he said. Cronus and Altus waved goodbye as they boarded the spaceliner, leaving Hugh to return to his own time in the time vessel. Hugh felt a pang of regret for not joining them on their journey.